you find something interesting. The first thing you find is that our solar system is created through the way that astrophysics claims, through the collision and accretion disks and everything else. However, it talks about each planet forming and each planet gaining its own net, which means orbit in ancient texts, gaining its own orbit around the sun. And even collisions in the younger period of the solar system, collisions between planets and moons, and how that created debris, and how some of that one planet exploded through a collision and turned into the asteroid belt. How would they know this? Telescopes didn't exist yet, but they shouldn't have even known about an asteroid belt. There's not enough light to look up from Earth and say, oh, I can see the asteroid belt from here. So, but they knew all of it. They knew the shapes, the sizes, and the order of the planets long before modern technology ever even knew it. They claim in all civilizations and all these tablets, this information was brought to us from beings that came from heaven to earth. In Africa, they call them the Nitiru, the beings at the time of Zep Tepi that turned mud into a kingdom. And into Sumerian tablets, Enuma Elish and Epic of Atrahasis, they talk about these gods, the Anunnaki or the Anuna, the gods that came from heaven to earth, all right, and built this advanced civilization. The Hopi and the Lakota, they call them the Star Brothers, right? No matter where you go on the planet.
Dogon tribe,
they call them the Nomo, right? In Australia, they call them the Pleiadians. No matter where you go, they all say the same thing, that people from another place came here and brought this wisdom and knowledge and imparted it on us. And they also say that they were seated on this planet. The indigenous tribes of the Americas, the Australian Aboriginals, I mean, they're saying that they were literally brought here. It's an incredible story. How can these disconnected continents and these disconnected cultures all have similar stories written across different mega eons of time? You got to say, wow, at some point there was a global civilization. That civilization, in my opinion, was the Atlantean civilization, that these Anunnaki people were advanced beings. Anunnaki only means from heaven to earth, from space to here. But the civilization they built was Atlantis. And the ring city that sunk or was destroyed was only one capital of dozens that existed, not only on Earth, but also on Mars, according to the Sumerian tablets.
So with like the Enuma Elish, the ancient Babylonian text, which dates around 700 BC, I believe, to these other texts that you're mentioning, having these similar explanations of these beings that came down here. Mm-hmm. Can you, in the most articulate way, describe what the conventional understanding of human civilization is in terms of like what's accepted versus, you know, what happened a couple 100,000 years ago with this creation story and how they obviously differ?
Sure. What's accepted by 75% of the planet, actually more than that, a little bit now, actually 85% less than 85.2% of the planet, is that about 6,000 years ago, the Earth was formed. And people were...
I guess that's crazy with what? Just like the Catholic Church, Christianity,
even Islam, Muslims.
But not everybody in those religions believe the 6,000.
No, but this is a general.
Sure.
This is where they go. This is this 6,000-year-old theory. And Adam and Eve was created out of the dust, and that two people made it and created 8 billion people on the planet. Now, I don't know about you, but if you take two dogs and mate two dogs and mate the same two dogs over and over again with their puppies and mate those two puppies, third generation is not even going to live. Not enough genetic diversity. You can't take two humans and get 8 billion. We know this already because people who intermate within their family, they have birth defects. It's just a part of genetics. But that's the accepted theory, is that the sky daddy came down with his wand, he took some dirt, spattle, turned mud into people, and then told these people, you now own this planet and go on, be fruitful and multiply, and that's what happened.
Right.
But that's not the way it actually happened.
So that's the conventional religious perspective. Could you share also the conventional scientific lens?
From the scientific lens, we're talking about now,
12,000 years for civilization, yeah?
Yeah, well, they pushed it back to 12,000 years because they go back to Tepe now, right? Just after the last ice age. It goes back even further than that, but they're saying, okay, we'll give you 12,000 now. We're going to go back beyond the 6,000 to 12,000, go back to Tepe, Karahan Tepe, Darren Kuyu. Those things really do age back that far. And so now they're saying that humans or Homo sapiens sapien might have been around for about 200,000 years. That's actually pretty accurate based on what I know genetically. And that just through natural evolution, millions of years prior, coming out of the trees and becoming well, it goes further back than that. If you want to go all the way back, it comes out of the water. We come out of the water, then we get legs, and then we go into the trees, and then we come down from the trees, and then we evolve into walking straight up and erect, and so forth and so on. Become Homo erectus, and eventually, we in some way, there's two different factions of us. We destroy Neanderthal, and then we end up becoming Homo sapiens sapien, and we take over the planet through natural evolution. That's the scientific thing. Now, you want to go into the ancient wisdom and the ancient tablets. Now you have to say, this story, to me, makes a lot more sense, but for some people, it might not. The tablets talk about the fact that advanced civilizations had already been built outside of this planet. They went to war with each other in a sector of the sky called the Pleiadian star cluster. That grouping of stars has thousands of stars and hundreds of planets. Imagine a planet is being destroyed, because they talk about destroying actual planets in this text. And now some of that debris could be coming your way. You've got to get off your planet. I believe this is the first occurrence of space refugees. People that were looking to flee that region of space and look to create breakaway civilizations on other planets, which is exactly what we would do on this planet if we had the technology to do it. So Orion, Aldebaran, other stars, they go, the Sirius A, B, and C, where the Dogon talk about the Nommo coming from, Earth, and even one planet named Nibiru, which I believe was a planet orbiting a brown dwarf star. And they created these breakaway civilizations. Now, according to the text, they were here doing the work themselves. The work was building cities, creating the civilization. They worked about 250,000 years without interacting with human beings. We were already here. Our cousin was here, a version of Homo sapien, not Homo sapiens sapien, but a version. There was going to be a war because these beings called the Igigi in the text were angry that they were doing all this labor and these other guys were just sitting back relaxing, and it's like, this is too much work. We need a break. And they weren't even given a break. It's like if you're a master architect and then you have a foreman, then the foreman has the actual construction guys. So these were the construction workers, and they were volunteers, but they felt like they were turning into slaves. So they decided to fall from heaven to earth, because they came from Mars down to earth. They were working on Mars at the time, to go to war against God, who was God Anu, the head god of these beings. That was in South Africa at a place called Adam's Calendar. They encircled his campus in the Epic of Atrahasis, and they said that we're going to go to war. And then Enki came up with an idea. He said, look, I have an idea. There's an existing being on this planet. We can add our essence to it, and we can get it to bear the load. And they were like, okay, this better work, man. And by the way, we want women. We're taking women back with us. This is where the sons of God mated with the daughters of men and gave birth to the Nephilim. So they took some women and went back with the women. And from there, we have the situation now where we're seeing the first cloned version of a Homo sapien. Now, in the beginning, there was no Adam. This is way before Adam. They're making these people, and the cloning technique is at the Temple of Karnak in Egypt, where you and I were just at a few months back. And I take people to the Karnak and I show them, it's right there in plain sight, the exact cloning technique. And even Muhammad Ibrahim, who was our guide, he also has the same exact story. He tells you the breaking down of how these people were cloned. Now, the cloning problem was the clones couldn't mate and create themselves. So they had to keep making clones in these Hathor birthing houses. Eventually, Isis says, I'm going to take one of these eggs and put it in my own womb, and I'm going to take it to term. So she gave birth to the first Adamu. It took her 10 months to go to term, and she gave birth to the Adamu. The egg from one of the hominids, put it in her womb, in vitro fertilization back in the day. Boom, 10 months later, we got Adamu. There's a cylinder scroll with her holding the baby up saying, my hands have made it. And that starts the generations of Isis, which is the Genesis, the Genesis. That's the book of Genesis in the Bible. That's what it is, the generations of Isis. And from there, they said, okay, let's mate him with the clones. Didn't work. Damn, so we got to get some DNA out of him. Let's create an Eve, mate them. Oh, we got it. Now they use the same technique of putting in the womb, in vitro fertilization, creating more Adams and more Eves. And then they started putting them in these mating houses, and they had set times to mate, and they couldn't mate out of order because they had to have genetic diversity. Even they knew this. And that's how they created a genetic pool. The evidence that people were here before Adam and Eve is that when Adam's son, Cain, killed Abel, he was kicked out of the garden. And the first thing he says is, the people out there will kill me. Well, what people? There shouldn't be any people out there. And God says, who's actually Enlil, Yahweh in the Bible, he says to him, I'll put my mark on you so they'll know you're mine and they won't touch you, like a genetic marker. So he goes out there and he says, by the way, when you go out there, you'll find a wife. And he found a wife. And that starts the whole Canaanite tribe, you see? So that's the story from the text. And I think, to me, that story makes a lot more sense just based on my research into cargo cults and what happens when a more advanced civilization meets a less advanced civilization right here on Earth. When we went to the atolls and in the South Pacific and took nuclear weapons there, and we showed up to these islanders who had never seen airplanes and tanks and submarines and people with hats and gear on and guns, and those people worshiped us. They tattooed USA on their chest. They would build artificial planes out of reeds and sticks and worship the planes and then stare up at the sky and wait for the sky gods to come back and bring them more cans of Spam. So that's, I think, what the planet is right now. The planet is a giant cargo cult.